Bow now. Bow now. Greetings, everybody. It's Hank Inferno here, back once again with Runehammer. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Hope you're living large in 2019 or small. Why be sizest about things? Last year, one of my most boiled down, most dense, well-received videos was called Trap Theory. So if you look down below the video here, there's a link to that video. And Trap Theory was not about lots of hi-hats leading up to disappointing bass drops. Trap Theory was basically my assertion or theoretical framework for saying that a lot of your D&D gameplay boils down to a trap-like mindset. And that trap-like mindset involved three pieces. So today, I just realized, man, you can't spell trap without RP. So the holy grail of a lot of what we do playing D&D is RP. Recently, in a forum post somewhere, I think it was mentioned that I'm really just a sort of a combat simulationist as far as my overall game style. I'm just really a D20 combat tactician in my game style. Now, that is, on the one hand, kind of awesome. I kind of like that assessment of me, but that is totally not me. Actually, I feel like there's loads of RP in the games, especially that I've been running lately with the Immortals from the Patreon page, and some super wacky and unpredictable RP. And so I had to ask myself, like, why, A, is there this holy grail of RP in our games and in our hobby? And then also, how can we bring it about? Part of the skill of being a brilliant dungeon master or game master is not just hosting cool games and bringing people together and bringing that energy and that fun to the table. It's also forcing issues in your game that you want to see play out. Don't railroad people into what you want to happen. And I don't mean forcing in that way. I want to use the word forcing in the terms that the Trap Theory video asserts using the concept of force. Now, this basically involves 3 steps to Trap Theory, and what I want to do in this video right here is show you how those same 3 steps that are involved in designing a really good trap are actually used to design and instigate some of the best role-playing that you're going to have in your game. At least that's the theory. We'll see if it stands up to making a video and, you're looking at it in Premiere and you're editing the things you said together and you're just like, dear God, what am I even saying here? Gods of D&D? I hear nothing. Cool. So what you see right there is a classic trap. It is a spike pit trap. Now this follows the 3 great principles. Are they great? I'm self-assessing, and I think the principles are great. This demonstrates the 3 principles that I presented in the Trap Theory video. The first one is drawing them. You need to draw your players, and this is where the word force comes in. If you want something to happen in your game, you draw them into it happening. In this case, it's the most rudimentary, most fundamental way to draw players into a situation, which is a big old chest of gold coins. They got to buy their new magic sword. They got to make armor out of Remoraz scales, so they're going to need gold. You're drawing them in. Now, gold is the most boneheaded draw you can possibly do in a trap or in an RP trap, as we're going to start developing this sort of terminology. You can make this draw super complicated. It can be like the NPC they're trying to rescue. It can be a baby Myconid. They're trying to befriend the Myconids, so they need to rescue the baby so that they can make friends, so they can raise the Myconid army, so they can go battle the giant insects and bring down the wall and invade the Elven Kingdom. So the draw can be as complex or as simple as fits your playstyle or fits your particular moment in your campaign. Here we're just using the chest of gold coins as a metaphor. The second part, as you guys know with Trap Theory, or you may not know, the second part is confinement. Not only do you need to draw players in, you need to confine them. If space and time are wide open, then there are a million possible solutions to what you're presenting, and it's not going to be that interesting. Confinement is a quick sort of condensed word for sort of locking the door behind them, but you can take that as a metaphor, metaphorically locking the door behind the players. And this means containing them. This can be in space and time, and preferably both. This means that they don't have a lot of cat herding to do. They can't just go any direction they want. and they have a limited amount of time to execute. So if you give them 2 years between the door and the chest of gold coins, they're going to find ways that are going to dilute the fun terribly into a morass of strange shenanigans, right? But if time is limited and space is confined, they're forced into fun, tight situations that are going to give rise to dramatic reactions. Dramatic reactions are the meat and potatoes of good role-playing. It's hovering in metaspace. Anyways, so if you look at this picture, which you've been looking at it, because looking at me can be relatively unpleasant. Third piece are the spikes themselves, right? You walk over a part of the floor dematerializes, gives way, or in some other way is removed, and then, get a dex roll, not to fall on the spikes. Oh God, my spleen. And then 1d6 damage. Or fall to 0 HP instantly and begin die. Now, this is the trap version. This is some super simple. This is so simple it doesn't even have a place in Grimtooth's books. Like, this is really simple trap. And everyone, I hope, has experienced a basic pit trap like this. Look, there's gold over there. I'm going to run and get it. Floor disappears. Spikes. Okay, so you have the 3 components, which are you draw them, you confine them, and then you spring. You spring the trap. You draw them, you confine them, and then you spring. You spring the trap. That is the 3 pieces of a classic trap, and I think the 3 pieces to almost every good encounter that you're ever going to do in D&D. And I'm talking every encounter. I'm even talking about like negotiating with the princess over the festival feast, whether or not she's going to marry the fighter or the barbarian in your party, and then there are drinking mechanics, and then there's a feasting mechanic, and before you know it, half the people have passed out, but you really actually need the princess to marry the fighter, because if she marries the barbarian, the truce is going to be broken with the nation of Grelnar, and they are going to turn in rebellion and destroy the castle, and that will be bad because the castle contains the books that you need to locate Durathrax's lair and destroy her eggs. Anyway, that encounter, even though it seems rife with social complexity and it's not a combat simulation, follows the same rules. You need to draw them into this situation. You need a reason they are compelled, I say, to go deep into this encounter, whether it's fighting a mind flayer in a cave with the ceiling collapsing or negotiating with the princess over dinner. Then you need to confine them. They cannot leave the feast. That's part of the festival tradition. It's a lock-in. They actually lock you into the feast until morning, and everybody must drink together, right? And at morning, basically the envoy of the enemy kingdom is going to arrive. So I'm just making stuff up to create confinement in what seems like a very open-ended social encounter. Finally, spring the trap. Now, in a trap, it's very easy to understand what springing is. The pendulum swing down out of the walls. The little holes start shooting tiny arrows. You know, a giant metal face slams into your face. It's really a kind of a messed up trap. In the case of the complex and nuanced social encounter, how do you spring the trap? What does that even mean? So that's what we're going to talk about, is putting the RP in trap and using a trap mindset to create and instigate great role-playing from your players. Can we, crew guys? Oh wait, you're not a TV crew. You're the gods of D&D. Grant me a new infographic. Oh wait, yeah, it's beep. Now you are going to apply the trap mindset to a more nuanced encounter or session of gaming, which is going to be RP heavy. And the only reason I really think this is so worth talking about is I see so many players and GMs mentioning that combat is great, but really my game is more about role playing. What is the translation of the trap mindset to the RPG mindset? Okay, instead of a chest of gold coins, right here we have questions. The questions are the draw, and that means questions coming from you as the game master. And these questions are tough questions, and they can even be binary questions, but they are questions that will draw players in, and sorry, here comes that word again, force. They will be forced to give answers to these questions. So let's go back to our princess example. The princess asks the players, who should I marry? I just don't know. They're both so handsome, and I want all 3 of our kingdoms to be at peace, and just, what am I going to do, after several glasses of wine? And she's like this royal character who's a little bit, Southern Belle style. Now, she's highly intelligent and devious, but she uses this persona to draw the other characters in. She asks this binary question, and then we move to our second piece, which is containment. Now, one way to play this out is that the princess would present this question, and then you would open the table for discussion. Now, opening the table for discussion can take you out of a controlled game experience. It can create a conversation. If that's fun for your group and that's manageable and moves forward in a timely fashion, then rock on. You don't need this video. Move on to a cooler channel like Nick's Craft Shack. You're done here. If you don't like the big formless sort of morass that can occur with totally free 2-hour roleplay sessions, then what I recommend is, again, confine them. And in the trap, you have a locked door and you have a corridor. Maybe you have, a way to not go back. The bridge behind you crumbles, something like this. You're contained. In the RP version, you are contained in turns. Whoa. Playing the game in turns is the containment that is going to keep your roleplay session from becoming formless. Now, a lot of people have criticized me saying that role-playing in turns is awkward and forced and weird. Now, you're not going to push on it so hard that no one can talk if it's not their turn. That's just plain bizarre. You are going to say, okay, barbarian, you said your piece. You said your sort of 4 or 5 sentences. Then you move to the fighter. Fighter, it's now your turn. What's your reaction to what he just said? Flubber, flubber, flubber. Well, I don't want the Grounarians to marry because if they do, the barbarians will turn against the kingdom. Don't you guys agree? Okay, yeah, wow, that's kind of an awesome point. Warlock, you're sitting at the feast table. You hear these 2 cases made. What's your response? You see what I'm doing as the DM? I'm moving from person to person to control and confine the RP. Now, at first, this might seem kind of draconian, right? But I think what you're going to get, people get time to think about what they're going to say. That's the first big one. You know how when you're waiting in Pathfinder for other people to do their turns and you get to look at how all your feats can interlock and how your stats can intercombine and you come up with that big combo attack so when it's your turn you're ready to execute? It's the same thing in really powerful dramatic role-playing. While you're waiting for the others to execute in turn to finish what they're saying, you can think up like a line or even write down a little key phrase so you don't forget and then deliver it in character. Or you can describe yourself from the third person if that's more comfortable for you. But you have a sense of when you're going to go on stage. The problem to me, or one of the many problems, with freeform RP is that you're always on stage. You don't know when your lines are. So does it limit some of the freedom and conversational nature of role-playing? Hell yes, it does. But you're not going to push it so far that it's awkward or difficult or feels weird for people. You're going to use turns to contain the role-playing space, and in my opinion, make it more dramatic, more tight, and more fun. And in a lot of cases, funnier and more dramatic and more epic, more soliloquy-oriented. Because I don't know about you guys, I'm not a voice actor. I don't have all these funny quips and statements ready to go off the cuff. I need that turn time to come around to me, and then I'm like, I have 2 lines to say, and I do an action. Okay. Now, finally, we have springing it on them, right? Springing it on them. So what is springing a trap on them in RP? This is kind of counterintuitive, right? Like, where do these Venn diagrams combine? You have, spikes, and then you have role-playing, and like, what's in there? What are the spikes when you're role-playing? Strangely enough, the springing on them element in a role-playing quote-unquote trap is actually a synonym for spikes. It's stakes. But not stakes like you're thinking of them like you hammer through a vampire's heart. No, these are stakes as in consequences. What's at stake? This is the trap and how you spring it. So the princess introduces this question. We go around the table and everyone has a bit of a statement. Then, the princess takes another slice of turkey. She drinks another glass of wine. Then she lets down this sort of clueless persona and reveals how intelligent and devious she truly is. And she says, well, that's all very interesting. But I had planned on playing the 2 kingdoms against one another. Why would I want to marry either of you? My hand is the prize in a great war. And actually, I've already set these forces in motion. And you poor saps will be caught right in the middle, and I'll use you as my stool pigeons to start the great conflict of our time. Blah, blah, blah. This is the trap that, as the dungeon master, I've set up. A trap can often be summarized as a fact that I know about as the DM that the players don't know about yet. And when they cross the threshold of time or of certain events, that truth is revealed. In the simple case, it's a bunch of pointy sticks at the bottom of a hole. In the nuanced RP case, it is the fact that the princess does not care about your opinion about this particular discussion. She has already decided she's going to lay low the entire kingdom. She's the supreme villain. And now we go to our next round of RP. Remember, we're contained. So I tell that barbarian, remember, he's at the front of my initiative order. I say, oh, so the princess reveals she's not a bubblehead at all. She's actually the mastermind of some terrible scheme that you guys seem to be caught up in. You still are locked in this room until morning to feast with her and her court. And as you slice your next piece of turkey, barbarian, what will you say? You see, I've confined them. I've put them in turns. I've given them huge stakes, which is the consequences of the outcome of their RP. But I've also given them the draw. The draw is what convinced them originally to even enter this feast, to even talk to her, to parlay with her. And in this case, it's her hand in marriage is the chest of gold coins. But the chest of the gold coins and her hand in marriage are no different when you're thinking as a dungeon master. You're still only listing three things. How are you going to draw them in? How will you confine them? How will you give it a focused feel? And third, what is the sort of the deadliness? Now in a trap, it's usually like literal deadliness. In an RP encounter, that deadliness takes the form of how important it is that you choose your words carefully. Just like in Sparta, right? The next thing you say, Leonidas, be very careful because I'm about to kick your Spartan ass, right? And then suddenly we go into slow motion, right? Remember the seeds are blowing on the wind and Leonidas looks back to his wife and looks back to the harbinger and they're just like, they have this moment. That moment is when you're waiting for your turn. The DM just took his or her turn speaking through the harbinger. Choose your next words wisely. They may be your last. And in that moment, knowing that he's going to go next, the player playing Leonidas is thinking, what am I going to say? And then that's what happens in the movie, right? He looks back at her. He looks at the ground. He feels his boots on Spartan stone. And he remembers what he's going to say. You bring the heads of dead kings to my doorstep. Bah! Pounds him right back into the pit of death along with all of his cronies. Now, he didn't have to do that. He could have RP'd that scene any way he wanted. And that scene, if you guys have seen that, is not a combat scene. When they decide to defeat them, they have no chance against the Spartans. There are no rolls made. They go in the hole, right into the hole. And they do not come out of the hole. They're toast. Earth and water, that whole thing. So I hope this is helpful to you guys to take RP, which should be one of the funnest and most exciting parts of your game, and then give it this pressed, forced, drawn, divided, and confined experience that makes everything move faster and more clear and more fun. So that's all I got for today. It's not the biggest video in the world, but it's a very important one because I realized that yes, if I am a D20 combat tactician type DM, that may be true, but I extend that mindset all the way down to the role-playing in my game. And I don't know how I come across on the internet, but I feel that the role-playing in my games, both as a dungeon master and as a player, are really fun and very nuanced and very epic. There's lots of relationships being built and crazy stuff happening that I didn't see coming. And it's happening like bang, bang, bang. And I think that's exciting. Feels a lot like a movie rather than sitting around the dinner table and talking, which I think some people like their game to have that level of mellowness. And rock on. Remember, there's a million ways to play our game and none of them are wrong. So rock on. But this is my particular hypothesis. I like things to just be like slam, 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 like lines in an action movie, right? And if that's a critique that people level against me, then rock on. But hey, I'm back.